So the point that I think we are at in this linear time space is the moment when the dying empire is in the process of meeting its Waterloo. And it seems that Netanyahu in the Middle East is determined to let this spiral down, and perhaps to the point where there is nothing left but the infamous Samson option. And it's not unlikely that that will be chosen. And that might even be the lesser of evils, in the sense that if the U.S. goes first in, let's say, launching the complete assault upon those blocks of power that will not tolerate the destruction, let's say, of Iran, will lead to a global Samson maneuver, and that may soon be unstoppable. It's already written, but as it escalates further, it reaches that point where everyone can see that there is no holding back the momentum of the lower death drive. And so because of that, it is, I think, extremely important that we continue the work of realizing what are those final instructions that we need to get out of this this matrix with grace. So I want to return to the Ashtavakra Samita. And last time we talked about the metaphorical significance that we might give to the 8 curves of the disfigured sage. But now let's talk a little bit about his story as it is told in the Mahabharata, because he is a sage who is mentioned, and I think as a historical figure, although clearly mythologically portrayed. But Ashtavakra was the son of a pundit, a Brahmin pundit, who was perhaps a little bit too conceited about his knowledge of the Vedas and his ability to interpret the will of God through the various pujas and homas and other rituals that would be performed for theurgical or divinization purposes, etc. So when the father, Kahor, and his wife, Sujata, when she was pregnant, Kahor used to read to the fetus in the womb, as well as to his wife, portions of the Vedas. He would recite them. But one day, a loud voice came from the uterus of Sujata and spoke directly to Dad and said, you know, I already know all these Vedas, Dad, and, you know, I don't mind you're reciting them, but you're making mistakes, you know? Well, this was horrifying to, you know, this proud pundit. And he lost it. And in a fit of anger, he put a curse on the son that he would be born with these disfigurements. So And shortly after that, even before he was actually born, Kahor was called to the court. This is the court of King Janak. And his reputation had been spread around, and the king and the court wanted to know, well, is he the real thing? Can he be trusted to be a teacher out there of the masses in the kingdom? So he had to debate a guy named, I think it was Vanden, the official court philosopher, who destroyed him in debate, right? And indeed, Ashtavakra had been right. He made a lot of mistakes that he didn't recognize. And so he was cursed, or if you prefer, sent into exile. The story is that he was exiled into the realm of the Nagas under the sea, and probably lived in a yellow submarine for some time. But in any case, he was exiled for these errors of a sacred nature. And so Ashtavakra was born fatherless in a way. But he grew up, and by the time he was 12, he was himself renowned as a sage of the Vedas. And he came to the court and had a debate with Vanden, who is 12 years older now and probably wiser, but he destroyed Vanden in the debate and became the new sage of the kingdom. And as a reward, Ashtavakra asked that his father be brought back from exile and forgiven. And so the father indeed returned, and of course was very happy to be forgiven by Ashtavakra, and in turn he removed the curse, so that when the son took a bath in a holy river, he came out without any trace of any of the disfigurements, right? So he was already fine and healthy and without any issues. When King Janak said, I want some personal instruction in reaching liberation, because obviously, you've got some siddhis there. So he then began teaching. Now, the Ashtavakra Samhita is, I think, properly called a Samhita and not a Gita. Why? Because I don't get the sense that this was written as a treatise or as a sustained text like the Bhagavad Gita that would unfold a story with a plot and a logical development of teachings that matched the character Arjuna's need to feel okay about murdering his relatives and fighting in this war because he felt that he could not overcome his family loyalty, etc. And so the Ashtavakra Samhita is not at all like that. It's so in my opinion, what it is just a collection of notes made at some point by the circle of disciples that were listening to him. And someone collected those notes eventually and put them down. But they come from teachings that Ashtavakra gave to students who are at different levels of consciousness and readiness to hear the full truth. And for that reason, it's a mixture of all what would in the Shaivite tradition be called the four upayas. Those who are ready to hear the full non-dual truth, those who require some further reasoning and development of willpower, and those who are just totally embedded in the belief that they're individual human persons in a world and they don't get it, that it's all Shiva, right? And they need to do preliminary types of sadhana that are in duality. So all of these are mixed together. They're not separated. And therefore we get a text that is philosophically somewhat incoherent. And so it's important that we not let that become an obstacle for us. But if you recall how it begins, it's a dualistic instruction, right? Shun the objects of the senses as poison, seek forgiveness, as Ashtavakra, was able to give his father, sincerity, kindness, contentment, and truth, right? So these are acts. These are modifications of sanskaras that are being suggested or recommended if you want liberation. And then it goes into the development of the fact that you are just a witness, and your consciousness is not an agent, a doer in the world. But he says in the fourth note, or shloka if you prefer, if you detach yourself from the body and rest in consciousness, you will at once be happy, peaceful, and free from bondage. And then he goes on, and of course, to the famous eighth shloka, you've been bitten by the great black snake of egoism, right? But the question is, who's been bitten? It can't be your ego that was bitten, because that would mean it was already there. It had to be the soul that was bitten, right, by the snake. And the soul must have been bitten by the snake in the form of the projections of one's parents on one, in the same way that Ashtavakra was not just projected on, but cursed. But in a way, every infant, I think, at the end of Kali Yuga, is in some way cursed, even before their birth, by the projections and fantasies and lack of understanding and perhaps exhaustion or conflict of desires and drives in the parents' family system that requires one to be the black sheep or the scapegoat, or at some other kind of a situation in which the black snake has bitten you before you had a chance to even fight it off. So the black snake of egoism is already present all that time, long time ago in Kali Yuga. But it's a different kind of ego than the one we have at the end of Kali Yuga. And I think that will become clearer as we read this. And why it seems more difficult to do what Ashtavakra obviously considered to be easy and obvious. For example, in the 9th shloka, burn down the forest of ignorance with the fire of the conviction, I am the one self, and I am pure consciousness, and be free of your grief, and be happy. So it is apparently still possible for one to hear such a thing and actually follow that advice. But burning the forest of ignorance today would require a huge conflagration, a holocaust. But then, again, it's emphasized, you are consciousness. In fact, you are Ananda Paramananda is the word, not just bliss, but supreme bliss. And it is in and upon this blissful consciousness that you are, that the whole universe appears as a superimposition, a film on the surface of a field or an ocean of consciousness. And when you, or like a a rope that is perceived in error as a snake in the dark light. So if you have more light, you will see that there is no snake. You were never bitten by the black snake. It too was an illusion. And I think this is very important. You haven't really been bitten. You just believe you have, because you took in those projections as if they were truth, and not simply the fictional script of the theodrama in which you are playing a particular character. And then he goes to what is now a cliche, but I'm sure at that time a rather revolutionary insight that is the key for everyone on a spiritual path. In Sloka 11, he who considers himself free is free, and he who considers himself bound remains bound. As one thinks, so one becomes. This is already a popular saying in this world, and it is quite true. So it's only your belief that you assume. You don't even hold it as a belief that you have considered rationally, but it's an assumption, a preconception, that you are a limited consciousness in a body, and you are only the consciousness of that body and its persona. And there's nothing more to consciousness. If you believe that, then you will have cut off your access to that more. But he says, no, it's not the case. The self is the witness, and the witness is all-pervading, because the witness is always present, and present in every node of consciousness, but present as the same awareness in every being that is conscious. And that is everything, ultimately, because it's all consciousness. So the self is the witness, not the participant. And yet it's all-pervading, but not simply pervading a single body. And by diffusing your pervasion of consciousness to contain the all, there is no longer identification with a single body. That's how there is the return to freedom. And that consciousness that is simply awareness, presence, it doesn't act, it doesn't do anything. It watches the unfoldment of the play. And if you have a subtle enough capacity to realize you're not in the movie, you're in your seat eating popcorn and drinking kombucha, but you love the character you've identified with so much that you think you're in the movie.